So, Tyler, we'll let you start here. Who is your unsung hero of the Hall of Fame game?
There were a couple different names, and it's a little tricky when everyone plays like 15 snaps, unless you're Junior Colson, you play the whole game, and we'll definitely get to him later. Uh, I kind of related to Junior Colson, who wasn't as reactive or didn't show as many instincts as I would have liked. A player that I had liked from UDFA Film Watch, who I ended up watching in this game because I'm like the only person who seems to like this player. Miles Purchase is my unsung hero of the game. He is out of Iowa State, a guy who's mostly a like outside corner, slot corner, maybe some box safety work, but mostly a corner in college. And because he's a UDFA that nobody talks about, I don't really get any updates on him. So it was a surprise to me to see him walk out there and play most of his snaps at free safety. Now, he did do that a little bit at Iowa State, but like it's 2 snaps the last 2 years at Iowa State. And then I think like 16 the year before that. So it's not something he really did. You can see the instincts because he did play some box safety work, but free safety was completely new. I don't know if that's because Minter just works that way with the number of bodies they have. Again, no reporting on this guy, so I couldn't tell you if this was just completely different than normal. But his particular instincts in this game, even if he didn't make the tackle, were on film and genuinely impressive. Again, as a guy who did not play free safety, it's impressive that he is doing that from free safety. If you watch his film at Iowa State, very much willing to tackle, very much willing to be physical. And you can't really get as many tackles as the guy as a free safety way back there at center field. But every rep, like it was practice, like it was a drill, if the ball were checked down to someone underneath or if there was a running play, he was always right there as the last line of defense. And even if he didn't make the tackle, he always would like put a hand on the running back. He would always be there should something happen, because in a real game, guys miss tackles. We've seen that plenty. He's always there to make sure like he's the cleanup guy. He also had his own tackle. He had a special teams tackle. He had the interception that we all saw. Like, I still don't know how he did it. I watched that enough times. I talked to my dad about it. It's like, oh, yeah, that guy had the interception. How did he do it? I have no idea, but he did it. So to me, just with the special teams work, with the coverage work, the little bit of run support, the underneath tackle, just a very unsung hero. And I hope that we've seen enough from Tony Jefferson. Like, he doesn't need to play anymore, or at least he doesn't need to play as much. Let Mickens do his thing and be the starter. Let's get Purchase on the field a little bit sooner this time. It was more of like when the quarterback change happened. That's kind of when you got Miles Purchase. I want to see him play a half. I want to see him play a little bit more.
Yeah, I was blown away by that interception. Like, it just like the body control is insane. I didn't watch him like you did, but I was also expecting him to be kind of a slot corner type, and you know, I didn't really focus in on him much when I was there. But for him to come in and play free safety, like that's a big transition. Like going from playing the slot to free safety, those are 2 very different, positions, obviously. I thought he tackled well. I thought he had, some good moments in run support. So I think this is a really good call. If he can continue to show those kind of instincts and, deep center field speed and ball skills, like that's a guy who's worthy of keeping on the practice squad for sure. And so I think that's a great call. There are a bunch of different calls because so many guys played.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Obviously he made the interception at the end, but it was just, a really solid closing to the game for him.
Yeah, it really was. So I hope we see more from him. Again, I don't think there's been any reporting on him. Granted, half the reporters were not even at practice. But like we saw with Keandre Lambert-Smith, he had 2 touchdowns from Herbert recently, yesterday, because like they're kind of pushing him up, it seems.
Yeah.
Hopefully Miles Purchase is getting just a little bit more run. I don't expect him to make the roster by any means, but hopefully he can keep pushing so he can make the practice squad.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree there. Like I mentioned, there's a few that I think you could highlight here. Joey Dale in the chat pointed out RJ Mickens. I thought Mickens was really solid in that game.
Yeah.
I was very pleasantly surprised by Corey Stewart, the offensive tackle out of
Mhm.
Purdue. He's obviously more of like a practice squad guy, but if he can continue to flash, I think that's something worthwhile. The player who I think we were kind of most optimistic about heading into this season, and we've been kind of waiting to see flashes, did have some flashes on Thursday, and that is Mr. Jamari Caldwell, the defensive tackle out of Oregon. 2 pressures, 2 run stops, very good performance in both of those regards. I think his ability to stack and shed, or as Mike Elson calls it, stack and peek. They'll do this technique in practice every day where you try and lock out the offensive lineman and then you kind of like look one way and try and get to the ball. He's already got that down from what we can see in the preseason game. Now, again, he's not going against, starting caliber offensive linemen. He wasn't really working with like the quote unquote like starters of that day. But this is what we expect out of him in these kind of moments where you're playing against backups. That should be a situation where Jamari Caldwell shines. And I thought on film, he definitely did that. And I wasn't like, so there was that one pressure that we saw like in the game, and I wasn't sure really was it him or was it just kind of like a broken play from the Lions where Kyle Allen ended up, I can't remember if that was the interception to Jefferson or not. But Jamari Caldwell like definitely beats the tackle and he's able to get in there. And so I think his ability to use his hands really stood out. I think his just size is something that stood out. A lot of people online who watched the film also, like Theo Ash and Benjamin Solak were saying like, oh, like this guy could be like a Puna Ford type of replacement. I don't know if I'm there just quite yet, and I don't know if he was able to get into the second team defense yesterday at practice. But we're waiting for a lot of these other defensive young players to flash in a positive way, and so Caldwell, for him to have the performance that he did and for it to look like it did on tape, I think you have to be excited about that, just because we don't really know what this defensive tackle room is. And so if this is kind of the start of Caldwell maybe making his big push to being a key rotational player, I think this was a great place to do that. And again, he's going to have 3 more preseason games to get all of these reps, and hopefully he's able to just kind of stack these positive days up. But numbers are good. Film watch was really good. So definitely big shout out to Jamari Caldwell this week.
Yeah, this is why we do a show like this and why we review the film, because it's like, okay, well, how did the trenches guys play? You can look at the numbers, you can kind of get a general sense from the broadcast, but the interior guys in particular, you almost can't tell. And I'm sorry, at this point in the careers of these players, 98, 96, 99, 93, 91, I'm trying to figure out who the heck these guys are on the broadcast, and I can't figure it out. Caldwell popped a lot more than I recall watching it on the broadcast. And it was a variety of things. You want a little bit of power. You want that one long arm as he's working laterally down the right sideline or left sideline, whatever it was. A little bit of strength there, a little bit of quickness. All that was flashing, and that was there. And I think it's very early. This is not a great comparison, but like I remember last year, you really focused on Tart and how he was just like, he wasn't playing a ton, but he'd make plays. Like in the per play snaps, it's like, whoa, you got to get this guy on the field more. And Caldwell, I hope, can kind of start working himself to being something like that, where, yeah, sure, he's not a first team guy and he's not going to break like the first team lineup. They're pretty much set there, but I hope plays like this and the preseason performance that he had just like pushes him a little bit further up the depth chart, because he's earned it. He looked pretty good. Wasn't perfect. Like, this has got not a first round pick. This isn't a perfect player. Balance issues, yada, yada. But for a debut for him, you saw a lot of just what made him special. The athletic traits that were there, despite what the RAS says, what you saw like at Houston in particular before he went to Oregon, just a very athletic, kind of freaky player. And as the development starts to come on a little bit stronger, hopefully he can become like a more involved part of this defense.
Yeah, I don't know really if like this coaching staff is going to trust him to like make a starting level push. Like, I think Deshaun Hand and Tier Tart are very, very clearly like the 2 starting guys this year. And, Otito Bonia has started to make his push as the 3rd guy. I thought Otito only played 2 drives, but I thought he looked really good. He had that one play that I tweeted out where he put the center 3 yards back and then made the run stop, which is fantastic. Again, backup center. Actually, might even be like their 3rd string center. I'm not quite sure. But I thought Naquan Jones had some good moments. Again, only played a handful of drives. So Jamari Caldwell is going to get a lot of snaps in the preseason. I think it's just going to be very valuable for him to, kind of figure out how to play certain techniques in the NFL, even if he's not playing against starters. I will say, like, being at practice and like standing, yards away from these guys, just like the body type of Jamari Caldwell is interesting. Like, I do think they might lean more towards like a redshirt year to kind of like get his body under control a little bit more. You look at Naquan Jones and Otito and Deshaun Hand and Tier Tart, they're all like really, really built out very well. Justin Boygby has started to, look that part as well. And Kennard, or not Kennard, excuse me, I'm looking at the chat and seeing Kennard, but Caldwell definitely has some college weight to him that I think like they're gonna have to work on a little bit. And he said that himself that he's his weight definitely fluctuated a little bit more than he wanted to. Um, so the good news is I think he can still play at his weight. I still think he can play at his conditioning level, but I do think the Ben Herbert aspect of this is going to be very good for Jamari Caldwell.
Yeah, I don't. Maybe it's because we're just so hyper focused on Ben Herbert and like, I mean, when do you ever see the strength and conditioning coach go at the podium? Like we were, as fan base, we've been so focused on him, but we've heard so much about these players and how much their weight has changed. In particular, in the trenches, like okay, Joe Walt or Boygby, these guys are adding weight or subtracting weight or whatever. It's significant. It's not like, well, I slimmed down a little bit and here and there. Like it seems to be a pretty dramatic shift with Ben Herbert. So I'm sure that'll be the same with Caldwell. I know post draft, like one of the notes I got on his character was like, yeah, he was overweight, like for whatever, I don't know by how much. I don't know if that's because the role was intended to be a little bit different. I don't know, but he was like overweight. That was a note on him. And so hopefully he's working towards being whatever Ben Herbert, Jesse mentioned these guys want him to be at.